My piece is called Becoming More Aware, but first I need to say that the story does contain a reference to sexual assault. I was born 74 years ago in the town of Nacogdoches in deep East Texas. I grew up in West Texas, Midland mostly, a small city of 50,000 in the midst of the Permian Basin oil field and the vast Chihuahuan Desert. I graduated from high school in 1964, never having been in school with a black or brown person. I had never heard of women's rights except for women's suffrage and had never given any thought to gay issues. I joined the Peace Corps upon graduation from college and went to West Africa, to Liberia. That began a lifelong journey of discovery for me as a straight white male, oblivious to the many forms of unearned privilege that those identities brought me. The Peace Corps experience made it clear to me that there were many things about the real world that I did not begin to understand. I was, for the first time in my memory, outside my comfort zone in a fundamental way, in a place that I clearly did not know or understand. In 1978, about 7 years after returning to the States, my life took a most unexpected turn. I was hired as the public education director of the Austin Rape Crisis Center. In no conventional sense was I qualified for that job, but the woman who hired me, the center's director, Sylvia Calloway, had the wild idea that because men were the problem, they should be part of the solution. So she wanted to hire a man to give presentations on rape prevention and be part of the team. A friend of mine who was working at the Rape Crisis Center called to tell me about the position. She thought I might be appropriate, and Sylvia hired me. As with the Peace Corps, I entered a different world, stimulated by curiosity and an eagerness to know what I didn't know outside my worldview as a straight white male. I was the fortunate beneficiary of the mentorship of Sylvia Calloway, who had a greater impact on my life than anyone other than my parents. Working at the Rape Crisis Center turned me upside down as a straight white male. From the patriarchal world I inhabited, a world that I had never understood or thought about that way, I entered a space created and led by women to promote the equity, safety, and rights of women. During Sylvia's tenure, she developed a methodology for what she called rape work. To reframe an often anger-oriented environment of the work in the 1970s, Sylvia developed the concept of loving anger in an attempt to reduce some of that conflict, an approach that recognized the legitimate and necessary anger of rape survivors, their friends and loved ones, and those working in rape crisis centers, but that encouraged people working with survivors and for social change to temper their anger with love. Love for the humanity and growth potential of all people, including the perpetrator himself, as well as his family. For her, our humanity was the common denominator for us all in understanding and doing rape work. Healing the wounds of the patriarchy, in Sylvia's terms, was the ultimate goal of rape work. We approached this healing one step at a time, collectively, as staff and volunteers through our work with survivors and our presentations in the community. Something happened a year or two after I started at the Rape Crisis Center that took me right to what the work was all about. One night, our hotline system didn't work normally, and the staff person on call had to go to the hospital. That staff person was me. I had been trained to do this, but had never done it before, and I was worried that my being a man might be a problem. I was nervous. I had spoken with a number of rape survivors about the impact of that experience on their lives, but I had never been called to support a woman who was still in the midst of that crisis. Amazingly, the young woman I met at the emergency room seemed more composed than I was. She had been kidnapped in a parking lot and driven out of town, raped, and left in a ditch. The perpetrator had beat her and she had cuts to be sewn up. She didn't say a lot to me, but she seemed glad to have me there. She was new to town and only knew her boss and his wife. Around 4 a.m, after the exam and medical treatment were complete, I drove her from the emergency room to their home. After leaving their house and beginning the drive home, I totally broke down emotionally. I completely lost control of myself. I sobbed uncontrollably in a way that I had never before, and it frightened me. I didn't feel it coming on. It just happened, as if the proverbial dam had just broken and a lifetime of repressed feelings had burst through. During the next day, I broke down again several times unexpectedly. My encounter with the young woman that night confronted me with an emotional experience that I could not repress in my normal fashion. It opened me up to my own emotions in an unprecedented way. After that event, my feelings gradually became more available to me. I remember that night as an experience of empathy stronger than I had ever felt before, so strong that it was numbing. I don't think I could quite assimilate all of what I was experiencing, and at the same time, bear witness to what the young woman was experiencing in real time. Thus, the breakdown. I went from an intellectual understanding of what I was doing to a far more visceral awareness of what rape work was about. As a man, I had never felt vulnerable to sexual assault, but now I had come close enough to it to understand it as an affront to human dignity and respect in the most fundamental way. The distance between my intellect and my emotions on this subject was obliterated. That's when my job got real. I did anti-rape work at the local and state level for 15 years. During the formative period of that work, I couldn't walk away from it. I don't know why my life took me to the Austin Rape Crisis Center, but the experience radically changed my life for the better. I am grateful to the many women who decided I was worth the effort. I continue to learn. Thank you.